He was mocked, humiliated, and treated like he didn't belong. But one hidden tattoo carried a secret powerful enough to destroy a billion-dollar empire. This is the story of how a janitor's quiet dignity exposed the arrogance of a CEO and changed everything forever. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove dignity always wins over pride. The morning light poured through the glass walls of Sterling Dynamics, casting long reflections across the polished marble floor. Employees hurried through the lobby, clutching coffee cups and tablets, whispering about the day's big meeting. At the far end, the towering figure of Victoria Sterling stepped out of the elevator, her heels clicking sharply like gunshots echoing off the walls. Every eye turned toward her. The billionaire CEO, known for her brilliance, feared for her cruelty. Her presence demanded attention, and everyone gave it, except for one man quietly mopping the floor near the entrance. David Johnson, the janitor, was an older man with calm eyes and a steady posture. His gray uniform carried the faint scent of cleaning chemicals, and a small patch on his chest read, "Maintenance." As Victoria approached, her expression tightened. She stopped right in front of him, staring at the bucket and mop that stood in her path. Without hesitation, she snapped, "Do you mind not blocking my way? Or is standing in front of your betters part of the cleaning service now?" The lobby went silent. The executives behind her froze, caught between discomfort and fear. David slowly moved his bucket aside, keeping his gaze down, his tone soft but steady. "Apologies, ma'am. I didn't see you coming." Victoria smirked, her voice slicing through the air. "Didn't see me? Maybe if you kept your eyes up instead of on the floor, you'd be doing something better with your life." A few nervous chuckles followed from the staff, the kind of laughter people give to survive around power. David didn't react. He simply nodded, wringing out his mop with a quiet rhythm. Victoria leaned closer, lowering her voice but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You know what separates people like you from people like me, Mr. Janitor? Vision, drive, the will to be more than ordinary. But you—" She looked him over with disdain. "You'll spend your life cleaning up after those who matter." Her words hit like stones, but David's expression didn't change. There was something in his silence that unsettled her. Not weakness, but control. He looked at her once, his gaze meeting hers for a brief second, and something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear, but something deeper, unreadable. She felt it and straightened, her confidence wavering for just a moment. Across the lobby, a few employees exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen Victoria humiliate people before, but this felt different. The janitor wasn't begging or shrinking away. He was just still. That composure unnerved them more than any angry reaction would have. Victoria finally turned to leave, waving a hand dismissively. "Get someone else to clean the executive floor," she told the receptionist. "I don't want this man anywhere near my office again." David said nothing. He simply placed his mop back in the bucket, the faint squeak of the wheels echoing as he pushed it toward the storage closet. The sound lingered in the silence she left behind. Inside the closet, away from the stares and whispers, David leaned against the wall for a moment. The noise of the busy building faded behind the heavy door. He rolled up his sleeve slightly, revealing a small tattoo etched into his forearm. A symbol, faint but sharp, of an eagle clutching lightning bolts. His fingers brushed over it like it was a memory he carried in his skin. His eyes hardened, not with anger but with quiet remembrance. That tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a mark that belonged to a very specific unit, a covert division of the U.S. Air Force known for high-risk rescue operations, a mark no ordinary janitor would ever wear. Outside the closet, the laughter of executives carried down the hall, but David didn't hear it anymore. His mind was elsewhere, replaying moments from another life. The sound of helicopter blades, the voice of a commander, the weight of responsibility. Those memories still lived within him, beneath the calm surface of the man pushing a mop. When he finally stepped back into the hall, his face was composed again, his uniform neat, his steps slow and steady. The receptionist avoided his eyes, pretending to be busy. The security guard gave him a sympathetic nod. He returned it with a quiet smile. Victoria, from her glass office upstairs, watched him on the lobby cameras, her expression unreadable. Something about the way he walked, that controlled, unbroken composure, bothered her more than she cared to admit. She tried to shake it off, telling herself he was just another nobody. Yet a strange unease crept into her chest, the kind that only appears when pride senses it may have gone too far. Down in the lobby, David gathered his tools and left through the service door that led to the underground maintenance wing. As the door swung shut behind him, the narrator's voice filled the silence like a whisper of fate. She believed she had put him in his place, but in truth, she had just marked herself in his memory. Every insult, every smirk, every cruel word would soon come back to her, multiplied. For some secrets, the voice said, pausing, are too powerful to be revealed before the right time. The echo of the mop bucket's wheels faded into the distance, but the story had only just begun. The next morning, the sun had barely risen when David arrived at the Sterling Dynamics parking lot. The air was crisp, quiet, and smelled faintly of gasoline and freshly cut grass. He parked his old pickup truck at the far end, the one spot nobody ever bothered to take, and stepped out with his usual calm stride. Across the lot, a black luxury car rolled in, sleek, silent, and tinted. The door opened and Victoria Sterling emerged, dressed sharply, sunglasses hiding her eyes but not her attitude. Her steps were quick and pointed as if the world itself should make way for her. She noticed David immediately. He was gathering trash from the edges of the lot, gloved hands moving carefully, expression serene. For reasons she couldn't explain, the sight of him, unbothered, quiet, still working after yesterday's humiliation, irritated her. She walked over, her heels striking the pavement like tiny hammers of command. "Well," she said coolly, "look who's back. I thought after yesterday you'd at least have the dignity to quit." David looked up slowly, the morning light catching the faint lines on his face. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "dignity isn't something anyone can take from you. You either have it or you don't." The tone wasn't disrespectful, but it wasn't submissive either. It was balanced, deliberate, and it unsettled her more than anger would have. Victoria scoffed, glancing at his uniform. "That's quite a philosophy for someone whose job is cleaning up other people's mess." David gave a quiet smile, turning back to his work. "We all clean up after someone, ma'am. Some of us just do it more honestly." That answer lingered in her head long after she walked away. The way he said it, calm, without bitterness, made her feel like she'd just lost a fight she didn't know she was in. By noon, she had called HR. "I want everything you can find on that janitor," she ordered sharply. "Full background. Education, employment, family, criminal record. Everything." The HR director hesitated, but obeyed. Hours later, a file landed on Victoria's desk. She skimmed through it quickly, expecting to confirm her low opinion. But one line made her pause. "Former Air Force, active duty, 12 years. Honorably discharged. Multiple commendations." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Air Force?" she muttered, almost amused. "So what? Plenty of veterans end up mopping floors." She tossed the file aside, her arrogance drowning out the flicker of unease that tried to surface. That evening, while the skyscrapers of downtown glowed with fading light, David drove home to a quiet street lined with old oak trees. His small, modest house stood at the corner. Neat, simple, but full of warmth. Inside, the smell of dinner filled the air and laughter echoed from the kitchen. His daughter, Zoe, sat at the table, hair tied up messily, surrounded by school books. She was 12, bright-eyed and stubborn like her father. "Dad," she said, looking up as he entered, "my teacher said something weird today." David hung his jacket and walked over. "What did she say?" Zoe frowned. "She told the class we should look up to people who make a difference, not people who just clean or fix things. And when I said you were a janitor, she said, 'Well, that's nice, but maybe one day he'll do something more important.'" David felt a quiet ache in his chest. He knelt beside her, brushing her hair back. "And what did you tell her?" Zoe lifted her chin proudly. "I told her my dad already did something important. I told her he helps people every day. even if she's too blind to see it. For a moment, David couldn't speak. His throat tightened, but his eyes softened. You said that? She nodded. Yeah, and I told her you don't need to wear a suit to be important. He smiled, a real, rare smile. That night, after Zoe went to bed, he walked into his small garage and pulled a key from his pocket. There was an old wooden chest tucked under a workbench, its corners worn, its surface scratched by time. He opened it slowly. Inside were fragments of a life most people would never imagine belonged to a janitor. Medals, photographs of soldiers in desert uniforms, and a folded American flag. At the bottom lay a small black phone, old but charged. He picked it up and stared at it for a long time, his reflection faint in the screen. The memories came back in waves. The roar of jet engines, the blinding sand, the radio calls of men under fire, and the faces of those he'd saved and lost. He pressed a number from memory. The phone rang twice before a gruff voice answered. This is Marcus. It's me, David said. There was a pause. David Johnson. I'll be damned. Haven't heard from you since Kandahar. You still in uniform? Not anymore, David replied quietly. Different kind of battlefield now, Marcus chuckled. What do you need, old friend? David's tone hardened just slightly. Information on Sterling Dynamics, their contracts, their investors, anything buried under the surface. Marcus went silent for a moment. That's a dangerous name to dig into. Why? Because it's time people found out who I really am, David said, voice low, calm, but heavy with purpose. Marcus exhaled. I'll see what I can find. Thank you, David said. He ended the call and looked back at the open chest. His hand hovered over one medal, the Distinguished Service Cross, and then the old photograph of his unit. He touched the edges of the photo, his expression unreadable. In that quiet garage, with only the hum of a distant streetlight, David made a silent promise. Not of revenge, but of justice. He wasn't going to destroy anyone. He was going to reveal the truth, and let the truth do the destroying. The narrator's voice returned softly. She thought she was humiliating a janitor, but she was challenging a soldier trained to fight back with precision. And the battle she started, the voice warned, was one she would never see coming. The next few days passed with an unnatural calm. Sterling Dynamics buzzed with the usual noise of meetings and phone calls, but under that surface, two men were quietly building a storm. In a dimly lit apartment cluttered with files, coffee mugs, and humming computers, Marcus leaned over his laptop, eyes flicking rapidly across documents. His expression tightened with every new file he opened. You weren't kidding, David, he muttered into the phone. These people are dirtier than I thought. Labor exploitation, biased hiring, offshore tax evasion, half of it's wrapped in government contracts. David's voice came through steady, calm, but firm. Find the ones that matter most. I'm not trying to ruin her company, Marcus. I'm trying to show my daughter that silence in the face of cruelty isn't strength. It's surrender. Marcus exhaled slowly. You do realize Victoria's family isn't just corporate rich, right? They have senators in their contact lists, military suppliers, lobbyists. You take one wrong step and you'll be crushed before anyone even knows what happened. That's what they think, David replied quietly. That's what they've always thought, until someone like me shows them otherwise. At Sterling Dynamics, Victoria continued her reign of authority, oblivious to the growing cracks beneath her empire. She still saw David every morning, pushing his mop, emptying bins, moving quietly through hallways she considered her kingdom. The more he stayed silent, the more she wanted to break him. It became less about a janitor and more about control. One afternoon, she called her assistant. Send David Johnson to my office, she said. Minutes later, he stepped in, holding his cap respectfully. The office gleamed. Modern art, leather chairs, and an endless city view stretching behind her desk. Victoria didn't look up immediately. She enjoyed making people wait. Finally, she glanced up, smirking. Mr. Johnson, she said, I've been reviewing our staff list. I have to be honest, you don't really fit the culture here. You're, how do I put it, not ambitious enough. David stood silently, his hands relaxed by his sides. I see. he said softly. She leaned back, enjoying her own words. "You're good at what you do, no doubt, but this company is about excellence. And sometimes, excellence means knowing when someone simply doesn't belong." He watched her for a long moment, and then he asked, "Miss Sterling, may I ask you a question?" She arched a brow. "Go ahead. Have you ever served your country?" The question cut through her arrogance like a blade through glass. For a moment, her expression faltered. "Excuse me." David's tone remained calm. "Have you ever worn the flag on your shoulder? Slept on dirt? Heard men cry for their mothers in a language you didn't understand?" "No." "Then maybe don't lecture me about excellence." Silence filled the room. Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're out of line," she hissed. David nodded slightly. "Maybe, but sometimes the truth doesn't stand in line." He turned, placed his cap back on, and walked out, leaving her staring after him, shaken in a way she couldn't explain. That night, David sat at his dining table, the old phone glowing faintly beside him. His laptop was open, dozens of spreadsheets lined with data, employee rosters, hiring reports, internal memos. He had begun building a meticulous record of every insult, every discriminatory word, every time she tried to make him feel small. He cataloged them not with anger, but with surgical precision. Marcus called again, his tone sharper now. "David, I think I found something. Sterling Dynamics holds a $2.8 billion defense contract. There's a clause in it. Government funding is conditional on veteran inclusion and non-discriminatory practices. If your story goes public, they lose it all." David leaned back, the faintest hint of a smile on his face. "So her company stands on the same foundation she tried to kick out from under me." "Exactly," Marcus said. "One proven case of discrimination against a veteran, and the whole thing collapses." "You sure you want to pull this trigger?" David looked out the window, the city lights flickering like restless stars. "I don't want revenge, Marcus. I just want her to see the truth when it hits her in the mirror." Marcus nodded, even though David couldn't see it. "Understood. I'll prepare the documents and leak the story through the Veterans Network first. When it hits the press, she'll have nowhere to hide." The next morning, David arrived at work as usual. His eyes followed Victoria from a distance as she greeted investors with the same dazzling smile that had fooled the world. She looked invincible, but he knew better. He had seen empires fall, not on the battlefield but in the arrogance of their leaders. He moved through the hallways quietly, recording every interaction, archiving every document, leaving behind a digital trail that no one could erase. Later that night, he sent Marcus the final folder, Sterling Truth. It contained every moment of cruelty she had ever thrown his way, all time-stamped, witnessed, and documented. The file would become a bomb disguised as evidence. As he closed his laptop, David exhaled deeply. The fight wasn't about her anymore. It was about principle, about dignity, about teaching his daughter that the greatest victories are won without a single shot fired. The narrator's voice settled over the darkness like a calm tide returning to shore. "She thought she was in control," the voice said slowly, but the janitor she mocked was already rewriting her fate. Every cruel word she spoke had become a line in her own undoing. And the man she tried to bury was the one already digging up her truth. The morning of the board meeting arrived with a strange stillness. The sky hung low over Sterling Dynamics' glass tower, the air thick with the kind of tension that precedes a storm. Inside, executives shuffled nervously, whispering about rumors that had begun to circulate. Whispers of a coming exposé that mentioned Sterling's name alongside the word discrimination. None of them knew where it had come from, but everyone sensed danger. In her corner office, Victoria Sterling stood rigid before the window, watching the city she believed she ruled. Her phone buzzed with unread messages from PR teams, legal advisors, and investors, all demanding answers. But her mind was fixed on one thing: the janitor who had dared to defy her. She had decided to make an example of him. The humiliation would be final, public, and irreversible. She sent for him through her assistant, instructing that all senior staff be present. To her, this was control, restoring the order she felt slipping through her fingers. But outside the building, the real story was already moving faster than she could imagine. Marcus had published the exposé, a quiet, devastating article titled "The Hidden Cost of Power: How Veterans Are Silenced in Corporate America." It didn't name Victoria directly, not at first, but it detailed a pattern of behavior, insider testimony, and government records that pointed unmistakably toward Sterling Dynamics. Within an hour, the piece had been picked up by national outlets. Within 2, the Pentagon's Office of Federal Contracts had issued an inquiry. The empire she'd built on arrogance was beginning to crack. Down in the maintenance hall, David adjusted his sleeves and looked at himself in the small dusty mirror above the sink. His reflection was calm, composed, but his eyes carried the weight of something final. He wasn't going there for revenge. He was going to close a chapter. When he walked into the boardroom, every head turned. Executives murmured, unsure why the janitor was there. Victoria stood at the front, immaculate in her white suit, her tone sharp and rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "this company thrives on excellence. Unfortunately, not everyone here represents that standard. Today, I intend to correct that." Her assistant opened a file marked with David's name. She looked at him like a queen passing judgment. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "your employment here is terminated effective immediately. Sterling Dynamics has no room for—" But she stopped mid-sentence. David didn't flinch. He didn't argue. Instead, he slowly began rolling up his sleeve. The room grew still as the fabric revealed a faded tattoo, an eagle clutching lightning bolts. A few of the older executives leaned forward, recognizing it instantly. One of them whispered, "That's the insignia of the 117th Rescue Squadron." Another gasped quietly, "That's the unit from Operation Hawkshield." Victoria blinked, confused by their sudden reaction. "What is this?" she demanded. David's voice was calm, deep, and steady. "This," he said, "is from a mission that saved 17 lives in Afghanistan. One of those lives," he paused, looking directly at her, "was your brother's." The words struck like thunder. The silence that followed was suffocating. Victoria's lips parted, her eyes wide. She shook her head slowly, disbelief and guilt washing over her face. "That's not possible," she whispered. "My brother, he died in an ambush," David finished quietly. "But before that, he radioed for help. My team went in under heavy fire. He didn't make it out, but 17 others did. Your family sent a letter of gratitude to the Air Force for that rescue. I remember your father's signature. The room was frozen. Executives exchanged stunned looks. A few turned away, unable to meet his eyes. Victoria's voice trembled. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" David gave a faint, sad smile. "Because true service doesn't demand recognition. But respect should never have to be earned through humiliation." At that moment, the boardroom doors opened. Reporters, cameras, and officials from the Pentagon poured in. Marcus was among them, holding his press badge. The executives backed away as flashes erupted. A Pentagon representative stepped forward announcing, "Effective immediately. Sterling Dynamics government contracts are suspended pending investigation for discrimination and misconduct." The sound that followed was chaos. Phones ringing, voices shouting, Victoria's assistant bursting into tears. The empire collapsed not with a bang, but with the slow, painful unraveling of a reputation built on pride. Victoria stumbled backward, staring at David as if seeing him for the first time. Her voice broke. You destroyed me." David shook his head gently. "No, Victoria. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped sweeping the evidence under the rug." Outside, the media storm erupted. Headlines flashed across every screen. CEO accused of veteran discrimination. Hero janitor exposes billion-dollar hypocrisy. By nightfall, Sterling Dynamics stock had crashed. The empire was gone. 6 months later, spring sunlight warmed a small park where David sat on a bench, watching Zoe play on the swings. He wore a clean shirt now, his old uniform folded neatly beside him. A government car parked nearby, and a Pentagon representative stepped out to shake his hand. David had been asked to consult on veteran inclusion policies. a quiet but powerful position that ensured others would never face what he had endured. As Zoe ran over, her cheeks flushed with laughter, she said, "Dad, my teacher told the class what you did. Everyone knows you're a hero now." David smiled softly, brushing a hand over her hair. "I was always the same man, sweetheart." "The world just took a while to see it," she grinned. "So, is this what revenge feels like?" He shook his head. "No, true revenge isn't destruction. It's rising so high your enemies can't touch you." The narrator's voice drifted through the quiet scene, gentle but firm. Victoria Sterling tried to destroy a man she thought was beneath her, but ended up destroying herself. True strength doesn't humiliate others. It lifts them. And in the end, the janitor she mocked became the mirror that showed her who she really was. The sound of laughter, sunlight, and peace filled the air, closing the story not in bitterness, but in grace. For more stories that prove dignity always triumphs over arrogance, the voice concluded, subscribe to Simply Stories.